Hi, it's Kat from Elevate for Self-Love, my channel where we talk about recovering from toxic relationships and regaining self-love and self-esteem. Today's topic is going to be my story and why I started this channel. I haven't really talked about it too much except in the earlier videos, and I know I've gotten a lot of subscribers lately. So I wanted to just do another video about why I started this channel and what happened to me. Before I get into today's topic, though, please subscribe if you haven't already, of course, by pressing the bell icon so that you can get notified of any new videos that I'm going to post in the future. So a lot of you do know, who have been subscribers for a long time, my story, and others who are new to the channel may not know what happened to me and how I wound up getting to this place where I am sharing my experiences on YouTube. So about 4 years ago, I met someone who seemed really wonderful. And it was around this time of year, actually October. We instantly had a connection. And our first date, I think, was something like 3 or 4 hours long. We were meeting up for a walk on the walkway over the Hudson. And it was just like a magical fall day, looking at the foliage, and things seemed really great from the start. However, I do remember feeling a little strange when at one point I said, oh, I need to check my work email, just give me a minute. And we stopped up by a bench and I was just like checking my work email, and he started to like massage my shoulders. And I was thinking to myself, I don't really even know this guy and he's touching me. That's kind of weird. Because I didn't give him any signs like I wanted to get physical. We were just going for a walk. Like it wasn't that kind of thing. So I thought that was a little strange. And in retrospect, I realized that this person was a covert narcissist, in my opinion, and didn't have the emotional skills to really provide me with a healthy, normal, functional relationship that was actually going to grow into something deeper. In retrospect, I see now this person was just capable of something more superficial, let's say, but they wanted to pretend like it was going to be more. So, I left that date, the first date, feeling like, okay, like I like this guy. We had a really good time. We talked about a lot of things. We have a lot in common. We both love real estate and fixing houses up. So I thought that we had a lot in common, and we did wind up dating for several years. However, interestingly, I met up with some friends right after that first date, and I said to my friends, I don't know about this guy. There's something kind of off. Like, I'm not sure. And, so that right there was my intuition telling me that this person was not healthy enough for me. And I ignored it, right? And like a lot of us do. And I went from that place, I continued to see this person, the guy. And like I said, we dated for several years, but it was on and off, and there were a lot of issues. And those issues were essentially, to me, he wasn't emotionally available to go deep enough for a real, healthy, reciprocal relationship. He wanted to pretend like he was, but he wasn't actually willing to, I guess, be vulnerable enough or emotionally available enough. He, I think, had developed into someone who wasn't emotionally available. And because of that, over time, it hardened into who he was. And he wasn't like willing to crack that open. And instead, he would blame other people. So he would blame me or anything else, like other things as well, other people as well. And it was never like him. He never took the responsibility, and he never wanted to be the one who was accountable for whatever had happened. So as time went on and I started to realize I see this pattern of this person, I had no idea about like narcissism, covert narcissism, or anything like that. I had no clue. I didn't know what I was dealing with. I just fell into a codependent mode, let's say. And that was because I grew up with a codependent mother. So I learned how to be codependent. That's all I knew. I knew that you just give and you love and you try and you stick it out. You stay loyal. You stay faithful, and you try everything you can to make something work. And that was my mentality. My mentality was, well, if he just knew, what he was doing wrong to me, then he would change. But unfortunately with these people, they don't really seem to care. They say they care, but they never change. So it's sort of like maybe they're not capable. Maybe they can't change. Maybe they can, but they just don't want to. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that my needs were not being met. And my ex wasn't overtly abusive to me with words, except he would say very hurtful things that were like in effect abusive, but he would just say them very like matter of fact. He wasn't like name calling. He wasn't like overtly abusive, but he was abusive in his tactics, in the dynamic of the relationship. And then, like I said, in some things he would say, which he would just kind of like very matter-of-factly say things that were so painful. Essentially, back to the dynamics part, there was a lot of pushing and pulling. So there was like, let's get really close. And there was a love bombing phase where he obviously was very, very complimentary towards me and really admired me for the goals and everything that I had achieved, my achievements in life, because I've been a very driven person and have achieved many things, which then turned eventually to like this almost like competition where he wanted to like compete with me because he had not achieved all of those same things, and now he needed to do so. So he sort of like followed in my footsteps of achievements that, we did have similar interests, but he basically was like literally following my footsteps of what I had done, buying a property, renovating it, making it into an Airbnb. But that was one of my more recent achievements that I achieved while I was dating him, and then he needed to do the same thing. So there was almost like this competition, and I think, like I've said before, people that are narcissistic are very insecure inside. Deep inside, they're just not feeling good about themselves, and so that insecurity comes out as competition or this like lack of collaboration. They're not there to be partners, like equal partners. That's what you think that you want, but they're not necessarily on the same page. And so unfortunately, when you don't have people that want to just be equal partners, when you have someone who feels like they're less, even if you don't think they're less, it's always going to cause a problem because they think they're less. And in their own mind, there's this whole cycle going on that's now going to make you bad. So you are going to become the bad person because they feel less and they don't want to feel less. So they're going to bring you down. It's kind of like what bullies do, like on a playground, like they're jealous or whatever about with some kid. They're going to pick on that kid, right? And they're going to bring that kid's happiness and self-esteem down. It's kind of like the same sort of thing. This person is now feeling like they're competing with you. And that's not a healthy relationship. Like, you should be partners. You should be collaborating. You should be making goals together. You should be dreaming together. You should be doing a lot of things together. And like I had thought from the beginning that we were going to buy homes together, we were going to renovate them, then we were going to maybe flip them or whatever, do rentals and all this stuff. And then there was this dynamic of pushing and pulling emotionally. The relationship was on such shaky ground all the time that we couldn't possibly achieve anything like that because the relationship was like hanging on by a string most of the time because he wasn't fully committed. And I mean, there were a lot of red flags. Like he dated his last girlfriend for 10 years and didn't marry her, and he lived with her too. Like I thought, okay, well, maybe he just made the wrong choice and he stayed with her too long. But I guess what I realize now is that that's what he does. He gets involved with someone that he only realizes he doesn't want to be with that person and then just stays and like it essentially leads them on for years. And that's what he did with me. He led me on for years. So I kind of realized at some point I was being led on, and I realized this is not, and I kept putting my boundaries down, and then we would break up because that's what happens with these toxic people. They don't like your boundaries. They don't like that you're saying, I need this, and otherwise I'm leaving. And they'll just usually just let you go because they'll try to placate you. It depends on the type of person, but they may first try to placate you. They may beg for you to stay. They may say, yeah, I'll change, but they don't. This guy would just let me go. But then I loved him so much. I wanted to keep coming back because I didn't want to believe that he wasn't as great as I thought he was. I wanted to think he was a good person. I didn't want to believe he was using me all those years. And just to go into like what I think he was using me for, I think it was like an ego trip, like to be with someone like me who was more successful and like very accomplished and together, intelligent, attractive. And he felt like I was a great catch and it would be a boost to his ego to have someone like that. He claimed he loved me, but I don't really think that's the case because I think then I would never have been devalued like I was ultimately. He would have realized that he did have a great catch, and a normal, healthy, emotionally healthy person would not want to let that get away. They would say to themselves, wow, if this person is going to leave because I'm not treating them right, I've got to make some big changes and actually do so. Emotionally healthy people can make changes. They can change their behaviors, that maybe they're making a mistake, but emotionally unhealthy people don't seem capable enough to be able to do so. So there's a lot at play. Like, there's part of it that's probably like he couldn't control, and there's part of it that maybe he didn't want to. Who knows? I have no idea. But I just know the characteristics were there for this type of personality who was manipulating and this pushing and pulling. I love you, but I'm not going to treat you right. Or I love you, but he would never want to talk about our future. So like there was a period of time when we were together, and if I brought up like, hey, like, what are your thoughts about where we'll be like next year? Like, do you want to get engaged, or, what are your thoughts? And he would literally blow up in anger and get so angry and say, why do you have to talk about this? And he would leave. He would storm off. Like he would just leave. And because I was so codependent, I let that continue. I stayed with this guy. And I mean, if that's not a clear message that that person does not want a future with you, I don't know what is. And then one time we got back together and he said to me, I wanted to know why he wanted to get back together with me, because I wanted to know if he was really committed. And he said something to me like, because you were persistent. Meanwhile, I had like contacted him like once a month. I didn't do anything like too persistent, like that was pushing getting back together. So you can see here how he was so withholding of love that he couldn't even say to me, like, I got back together with you because I think you're an amazing woman that I love. He couldn't even do that because he's so programmed and like okay with withholding love and not giving. And I need somebody who gives. And I realize that now. I realize that this person didn't give enough love. He may have done some loving things. He did do loving things. And he often said he liked to display his love by doing tasks for me, like around the house and like fixing things. And he did do those things. But when I ask you, why did you get back together with me? Your answer should not be because you were persistent. That's not a good answer. That doesn't make anybody feel emotionally safe or emotionally loved or appreciated. It made me feel undervalued. It made me feel bad. It made me feel like he didn't see my good qualities at all because if he did, wouldn't he have listed them then? Right? Like it sort of was like, It's like that thing where you're like, where a dog goes like this. That's how I felt. And another time he said something along the lines of, maybe I'll treat the next girl better. And we had been talking about getting engaged at that point. And I'm thinking to myself, what? Like you just told me you wanted to get engaged and now you're saying there's going to be another girl? You literally know that we're not going to get married then, right? Like it was so much like mixed messages and, he was always saying, I love you, which clearly wasn't the case because if he loved me, wouldn't he have wanted to move things forward? Wouldn't he have wanted to have a life together? Because we had really good times together. We spent some really great times together. He made me laugh. I made him laugh and we had some good times. Wouldn't you have just wanted to enjoy that and be grateful? But like narcissistic people, these toxic people, they cannot be grateful. They always think there's something better out there. They always think that they're missing out. It's like FOMO, right? So they think that there's something better out there and that they need more. So if like and also there's another piece to it where when you're quote unquote criticizing, it's what they think is criticism, but you're trying to put down boundaries. So they will misinterpret your boundaries as criticism. So if you say to them, like, I didn't like what you said to me, I don't know why you're screaming and getting upset and storming out when I talk about our future. Like, what does this mean? Toxic people or people that are not emotionally in touch with themselves are going to get angry at you and they're going to say you're criticizing them. And, what you're trying to do is lay down a boundary and say, I don't want you to be screaming at me, or I don't want you to be storming out when we're having a conversation. You're trying to put out a boundary and they're going to interpret that as criticism because people like this can't take accountability. They can't face the shame of having made a mistake. They can't own up and take it on the chin. They can't do that. They have to make it somehow your fault. Even if like they may not overtly say this, but they'll think this and may even say, you made me do this. It was because you did this that I did that. It's like a very childlike kind of rationalization of, well, you made me do that. And we all know we're adults. That's not really a rational reasoning. You can't blame other people for what you've done. So there was a lot of that kind of blame game going on in that relationship. He was so caring and kind, and then he would blow up and be angry and storm off. So there was that Jekyll and Hyde factor that I often found. He definitely didn't show that persona outside. He seemed like a really nice guy, very quiet, and like, dressed well and seemed very kind and caring, and he was in some ways, but it was that Jekyll and Hyde that was the problem. If he was just that kind, caring person all the time, it would have been great, but he wasn't. He had that other piece of him, that angry piece. And then interestingly, he went to therapy, and his therapist like basically enabled him, because she was like saying, she made it seem like to him that the problem was outside of him. And so I'll give you an example. So when we were dating for over a year, I guess, I was telling him I wanted more time together. And I think we saw each other, I don't know, maybe like twice a week or something. And we lived pretty far from each other. So it wasn't like we could just get together for short periods of time. And I think I wanted more time together. I think probably in retrospect, I just felt like I wasn't getting, that he wasn't on board with us emotionally, like he wasn't emotionally committed. And that's probably where this came from. But let's say in my mind at the time, it came out as I want more time together, thinking maybe that would make me feel maybe that we were solid. And so I think it was like we saw each other like 2 times a week, which really isn't a lot of time for people that are dating over a year. I don't think it's a lot of time. And I think I wanted like one more day or something like that. It was something along those lines. And, he went into his therapist and she said to him, well, you need to come up with a calendar where you will have like a certain amount of days that you're comfortable giving Catherine. And then, the other days you give yourself. And he came back to me with like a 3-month calendar, which also we were going on a vacation. So this calendar was in there like that we were going away for that period of time. So he was giving me more. So then he wanted to take away other days. And he was like telling me like on Saturday nights, like he didn't want to have to come because he wanted to just rest and work on his own house or cut his grass or whatever. Like, and I'm thinking to myself, like, this is not getting closer and our relationship deepening. This is like me getting shut out and you're making all these rigid rules. And, yet again, though, I didn't make the choice at that time to leave, though I should have. We had a vacation planned. And I figured, let's keep this vacation, because I didn't want to like let go of the fantasy of what this relationship was. And I thought maybe the vacation will help us to get deeper and stronger. Ultimately, I realized that this person was never going to go deep with me. They don't have the capacity or the motivation to have that kind of relationship, like a deep, loving, reciprocal relationship, at least not with me. And so I'm not sure why they led me on for so many years. That's their mistake that they'll have to deal with and figure out on their own. But for me, I look back and I could see my mistakes and I could see what I did wrong. I didn't protect myself enough. I became very codependent. I kept trying to fix him, to save him, to help him, and then even, with the therapist, we went to therapy too. And he would just blow up in this anger in the therapy session. So the therapist was like, I can't really do anything because he keeps erupting in this anger. So, he definitely had anger issues he had to figure out on his own. I think he did ultimately go on an antidepressant, which did quell a lot of his anger. I noticed that he didn't have those outbursts as much. But then again, I wasn't bringing up these hot topics like, where's our relationship going? And are we going to get engaged? And where do you see us in a few years? Do you want to have a baby? And then like that, I remember at the end, it was like, I did start bringing some things up, and he said something to me like he could have a baby like anytime he wanted up until however age. I'm thinking to myself, then you're talking about with someone else, because I'm getting to the place where I can't have a baby anymore. Like, again, there was like an undercurrent of a message there that he was not planning to spend the rest of his life with me or even anytime soon. Like it just sounded like he was on his way out and but he would never tell me that. He never broke up with me and said, I'm like, I don't want this relationship because, he might have broken up with me when he was angry. He did that a lot, but then we would get back together. So I didn't know what he really wanted. And I guess, maybe he did just want to break up and I was not the person he wanted. And that would have been okay if he didn't keep telling me he loved me and so forth. Like it was kind of like, if you love me so much, then why wouldn't you want to have a relationship with me? So it was like all these mixed messages, that Jekyll and Hyde. It really messes with you, like I've done the video, which I'll link up again. The toxic people mess with your minds. That video now, I think almost has 4,000 views. It might be more than 4,000 views. And, people relate to that because this does happen to them. And so this is my story. Like after I went through all this, at the end, I broke up with him, but then I kept going back because I just wanted things to work because I had invested so many years and I did love him and he kept telling me he loved me, but towards the end, he didn't anymore. Towards the end, I think he just wanted to not be accountable even further than he had not been accountable before. He didn't want me to hold him accountable. And I was probably coming down harder on him because I wanted him to be accountable. And that was what he was trying to avoid. So at the end, things had gotten pretty strained between us. We broke up. Then I was contacting him. And then he did something really, really messed up to me and betrayed me in a very public way. And I found that to be like sort of the breaking point for me, which made me realize his true character. It made me realize that he's not full of integrity and he's not a loyal person, because a loyal person never would have done that to me, even just like on a personal level, like a person to person level. He had known me so many years and I had been so good to him for so many years. He could have just let me go. Like he didn't have to betray me on that level. Like he could have just not done that piece. And like, basically we could have parted ways. But once he did that, I was just so shocked and devastated, and like the betrayal was just really bad. So after that, I realized this person is not for me. This person was never for me. They didn't have an appreciation for who I really am. They were telling me they love me, but they don't even know what love is. Love is not betraying someone in a public way. Recently, I reached out to him like over a year later. I had not reached out to him at all, but I just reached out to him to see if he had any remorse. Guess what? He doesn't have any remorse. Are you surprised? I'm not surprised, but I just thought, you know what? I feel indifferent about the situation now. And I said, like, let me just reach out and see if he has any remorse. Like, and he had me on my Instagram. So I kind of like just called him out on that and then asked him about that day when he betrayed me. He literally had no remorse. And that's how these covert narcissistic people are and these toxic people are. They don't have remorse. They don't think they did anything wrong. They literally don't self-examine. I was someone that was so loyal, so faithful, so caring to this person and loved them so hard through thick and thin for years. And he betrayed me in a public way and thinks it's okay. Just justifies it and thinks it's okay. So that's my story. And that's why I wound up making this channel, because I knew that other people were feeling so much pain from betrayal and pain from going through these types of relationships. I needed to try to help other people as I healed from this. Because in the beginning, like right after this happened, I was a mess. I was in so much pain. I remember like crying on my shower floor, just being devastated, like convulsing, like I was going to die. And I know a lot of you have felt that way as well. And when you deal with people that are messing with your mind, and you deal with these narcissistic people that are entitled and selfish and only think about themselves, you do feel that pain because you've tried to love them, you've tried your best, and it's devastating when it finally ends because you tried so hard. You tried so hard, and then to have, like, let's say a betrayal at the end where they slap you in the face, it's really, really painful. So I wanted to start this channel to explain to people that you can heal and you can get past this. Number one thing is no contact. You cannot have contact with this person. I didn't have any contact with this person for over a year, and I had that one limited contact with that person just because I was curious if they had any remorse, and then I just blocked them and haven't had any contact with them since that point either. I was just curious, like, I wonder if they have any remorse, and they didn't. So it just goes to show you what we've talked about before on this channel, which is they don't have remorse, they don't take accountability, they don't apologize, they don't feel sorry. They literally think they did nothing wrong. And that's this situation with me at the end of my relationship with this person that was the case. So I hope this video helped you today. And if it did, please share with your friends, anyone that you think might benefit from this message or has gone through something similar might appreciate it. And any questions or comments you have about my situation, put them in the comments below. But there is hope. You can heal. And over time, you will realize that you are still a wonderful person, a loving, caring, amazing person. And just because they didn't see that or they didn't appreciate you and they couldn't love you, it doesn't change who you are.